Hi, my name is Nicole Hemsoth, and I'm the editor of Datanami. I'm here today with Dr. Jim Goodnight, the CEO and co-founder of SAS. Thanks for joining me.
Certainly.
So you have witnessed the evolution of data in general. You've been around, you've been working since the 70s on big data analytics. Can you describe that evolution and give us a sense on where you think analytics are heading now, today?
Well, analytics are certainly one of the big things in industry right now. I think since IBM decided they were going to get into it, and they couldn't buy the best, so they bought a lot of smaller companies and tried to piece them together. So with that, and they're making a lot of noise about it. So our business has actually been helped a great deal by all the buzz about analytics, because when they ask the analysts, well, who's the best analytics company, they all say SAS. So.
They say SAS, they say lots of other companies, and like you said, IBM has snatched up a number of companies. You've been notoriously independent financially and as far as acquisitions go. Do you think that'll change in the future as big data analytics grow bigger and the needs get more diverse for different industries?
Well, right now we have converted almost every one of our procedures in SAS to take advantage of the multitudinous number of cores that are available on large arrays of computers these days. We've especially tuned in to blade computers, and one of my favorite computers is now a 48 blade rack of Intel chip-based machines from either Hewlett-Packard or Dell. And they were amazingly not that expensive. Most blades today with 128 gigabytes of memory and two cores with two chips with say 16 total of 16 cores apiece. These are still around $10,000.
Right.
So it's an amazing amount of computer that you can buy for $10,000. And then when you put an array of these things together, you've got all the power in the world.
Tons of compute horsepower.
Yeah.
Programming for those types of systems is a little bit of a challenge. Can you speak to that?
It is a very much of a challenge. Most of the analytical routines were conceived when everything ran sequentially on a single processor. So it takes a little thought about how to do this. I started my road down this. My trip down this road about 3 years ago. I was over in Singapore, and we had a head of one of the banks there that were using our SAS risk products, and it was taking them 18 hours to compute risk. And he said, we're already into the next trading day before we can compute our risk. We need to try to do this faster. Well, when I got back here to Cary, I worked with the risk people to completely understand all the computations they were doing, and gosh, they needed to do about 200 trillion operations. Right. And we were using a computer that was running at 2 billion instructions a second. And yes, that equals 18 hours. If you've got that many computations to do, you just can't do it on a single processor. So I went to our advanced computing lab and explained to them exactly what needed to be done, and they began working on that problem. And we have that now. That problem now runs in about 15 minutes. But it's not just big data. It's the fact that even with reasonable sized data, sometimes the computations are so vast and so enormous that it just takes literally a year or something to do some problems. And therefore we have all got to think in terms of parallelized processing, where we parallelize, or I don't know how you say that word, parallelize or whatever, but we have to learn to do that, and we have to redo our algorithms.
Right. So I'm going to make the contention lots of people have lately that first of all, hardware, I think, is one of the big overlooked topics when people are talking big data analytics. Hardware is very important. Right. You have to maximize these applications to run on this incredible hardware. So there's a merging between HPC, high performance computing, and big data. Do you agree with that? And where does SAS fit into that merge?
Well, I think we're out in front. We are already shipping our high performance analytics, and we've recently introduced a visual analytics product that you can sit and do plots and charts on over 1 billion records, and it's a second or two per chart or plot. Right. as you explore the data. If you have let's take that example. You have 1 billion records, and you've got a machine that's got let's say a little over 1,000 processors on it, or processors or threads. Let's call them threads. So you've got 1,000 threads. You've got 1 billion records. So therefore, you give each thread 1 million records. Mm-hmm. And now you have the computer that's up in the top part that's in charge of this array. I mean, you have to put one computer in charge of all these others to give it the instruction. So the head computer tells all the others, I need to know the sum of revenue. So each one of those 1,000 processes computes the sum of revenue for its 1 million records. And that's extremely fast because we're operating 3 billion instructions a second on each one of these processes.
And with that in mind, the term real time gets thrown around a lot, and to me that seems sort of like a subjective term, and it's one that SAS uses, it's one that Oracle uses, IBM uses, and the power of real time is unquestionable. Financial services firms need it. Everyone needs it. Risk management needs it. So describe where you see the future of real time. How does that fit in with the software side? How real time can we get?
Well, for things like credit card fraud, we're scoring a purchase on a credit card now. We're doing about 400 a second, so that's pretty good. I mean, a second or two is pretty much real time. Right. Unless it's some of these really high volume trading programs that are executing thousands of trades a second. But by and large, with the capability of harnessing thousands of cores together, we can do a lot of things in real time. One of our goals on the risk was be able to indicate how your portfolio will be affected by a particular purchase or a particular sale. So before you do the purchase, let's pretend we add it to our portfolio and see what kind of risk we result in. So instead of risk being done at the back end, after all trading closes, and the risk managers are trying to figure out what they need to do to hedge some of the bets some of their people have taken, we could actually do the risk computations up front before the trade, right, and save a lot of that.
That's incredible. And financial services is unquestionably a big part of your business. What's next? What markets haven't been explored? I mean, one good thing about all the big data hype is that it's opened up a lot of conversations about analytics in general, and resources like the cloud have made it more affordable than ever to run advanced analytics. So what new markets are opening up, and what new opportunities do you see on the horizon?
Well, we have over the last 10 or so years have tried to verticalize our not only our sales forces, but also to develop specialized products for different verticals. As you said, banking is our biggest. It's about 40% of our revenue, and we specialize there in credit card and debit fraud. There's a lot of CI, customer intelligence, our marketing automation that we do, where we're looking at historical information about customers to decide which one we should target in the next campaign. But retail is a sector that we're seeing a lot of interest in analytics. We're working with companies like Macy's to be able to help them do pricing every Monday morning. So early hours every Monday morning after the stores are all closed, we fire up our pricing optimization routines that look at the history of movement of a particular item in a particular store. Mm-hmm. And if those items are moving pretty well, then we may suggest the price ought to stay the same. If they're not moving, and it's a seasonal item that has to be moved out by the end of the season, and in that case we will suggest a markdown. And then we go through, Macy's, for example, in their 850 stores has about 270 million SKUs total. And every one of those SKUs has to be repriced every Monday morning. I mean, some we don't change, but they're all the price computations are done every Monday morning for them. And then they go through an optimization process to come up with the best overall solution that will make sure those items are gone by the end of the season, but try to sell them at the highest possible price.
I know healthcare too is a big potential market for you. How do analytical processes like you just described for Macy's carry over to healthcare?
Well, in healthcare, the first thing I would say is that almost every drug that is approved by the FDA is analyzed with SAS. SAS is sort of an industry standard among the pharmaceutical companies for analysis. If it's been analyzed with SAS, the FDA will accept it because we are sort of on their approved list of vendors for that. We're doing a lot of work to help pharmaceutical companies in their clinical trials by housing their data right here. So over in our data center, there's a large room that's set aside that's got hundreds and hundreds of clinical trials that are going on right now. We host the data and help do the analysis on it. In healthcare, we've started an initiative right now with Blue Cross Blue Shield here in North Carolina to be able to understand the underlying risk of every customer that they have, or every client they have in the state of North Carolina, so that they can maybe start suggesting some preventive things that they should be doing.
So the personalized medicine dream.
Well, a personalized risk assessment so that doctors can better off be able to steer those patients down the road that'll be maybe a more healthy road for them.
Okay, and that's an incredible initiative. Let's jump back a little bit to the technology. We're sort of moving around here. We were talking about high performance hardware a little while ago.
Right.
What is your personal opinion, having seen this vast evolution in database technology and analytical technology? What's your opinion on open source right now? The value of open source. I mean, one can argue that there are lots of new supported versions of languages like R, for instance, that are finding new inroads into enterprises. Where does SAS fit in with open source? How are you going to compete, if at all? Is it a matter of competition?
Well, R has been around for quite a few years. We have actually incorporated it into SAS so that if you want to use SAS, you can do so within SAS without leaving and going somewhere else and running R and coming back. So we try to support those users that are interested in it. R is we think of it as a very wide language. It's a language that a lot of PhD students have actually done their thesis research in, and then they put that research program out there in open source for people to use. We really specialize in the really in-depth, very, very deep kind of statistical operations research routines that can optimize millions and millions of records. So it's a slightly different market.
Right. What about frameworks like Hadoop, for instance, and the NoSQL movement, if you want to call it a movement?
Well, I've always been NoSQL myself. I have never liked SQL. SAS has its own data file system that we use. It has worked well for 40 years now, and it handles massive amounts of data. And it is very similar to some of the Hadoop file system concepts in that we write out very large blocks of data, and they're very, very, very tightly compressed, so that you've got, and this is exactly what you need. If you're planning to read all of the data and analyze all the data, then you don't need it in a relational database system where you have to join it first. You spread it and split it out into different tables. Then anytime you want anything, you've got to pull it back together in joins. And most relational databases will take 5 or 6 times more storage than you'll use with either a SAS data set or a Hadoop file, mainly because if you're in the business of being a transaction system, you've got to go in and out fast, very small transactions, change an account balance, update this, update that, read this, read that. So they need a lot of pointers and indexes built into their data storage so they can move rapidly through the data. And if you plan to read all the data for your analysis, then all that stuff is just really a waste of time. But we have our own file format that we use in Hadoop, and we're very pleased with it. It works very well. And SAS plans to support all of the different Hadoop file formats.
And your customers, did that evolve out of demand from customers, or was that more of an internal development project?
Well, again, we started down this road about 3 years ago, and we did look at MapReduce at the time, and it's a master-slave arrangement where the slaves are told to do something and everything comes back to the master. There is actually a better control system called MPI, or Message Passing Interface, which allows the slaves to talk to each other as well, so they can pass information. So we have found on some of the iterative problems, a lot of our modeling is of a nonlinear nature, like a logistic regression or a neural network. These can't be solved with one pass of the data. You've got to go back through it over and over and over again and iterate until the parameters that you're estimating converge to a solution. So we may be going through the data dozens of times in these nonlinear systems, so that in fact, after every iteration, it's got to be communicated back out what's changed and what the next iteration should look like. And to do that, it makes a lot of sense to let slaves talk to slaves, if that's what you want to call them. So, and the message passing interface that we use allows that. It's actually been around since 1992 when it was first invented.
MPI is widely used in high-performance computing.
Yeah, I think it's far better than MapReduce. Okay. I don't understand why the Google people developed MapReduce in the first place, because MPI was already there.
Do you think they were just showing off?
I don't know. But now the large part of our community is in this uproar. Oh, we've got to convert everything to Hadoop, and
right.
Well, yeah, the Hadoop file system is fine. It does a good job of replicating. But what a lot of people don't realize is that Hadoop file system is a file system, which means if you have think of a filing cabinet full of folders, it manages where the folders go, and it makes sure and it keeps track of where every folder is, and it also duplicates folders in other drawers, or other filing cabinets. So if something happens in this filing cabinet, it's over there. Now what's inside that folder? It doesn't care. It doesn't know. It is irrelevant. It's a file system. So that means now the next thing you have to do is develop your own file format to how you're going to write stuff out there. And so we'll see a proliferation of that. And there's one of them, open source, that have decided they want to have SQL available inside their file. And is that the Hive or Pig? I can't remember. I don't remember the names of these things. But that's sort of against the whole concept, I think, of what we're trying to do. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, so you think Hadoop maybe is a little bit overhyped then, in favor of More traditional, I mean, honestly, more traditional solutions, really.
I think it is, really.
Okay.
But all the banks have jumped on it because all their modelers want to write program code. I mean, Hadoop is just a framework that helps you move your programs over multiple machines and let them do work and have the results be reduced back up and brought back up to you. But that means somebody's got to write all the programs, and they've got to be written in a parallelized concept so that you can take advantage of all the parallelism that you've got available. So,
which we just hit on when we were talking about, you brought a Sandy Bridge chip with you here.
Oh, I did, yeah. I often do a little show where I actually open up a blade and show what's inside a blade. But inside today's blades, they all look almost identical. I think that's because they're probably all made by the same company in China. But the blades have these new Sandy Bridge chips, and these things are running about 30 or 40% faster, better throughput than the Westmer chips, which are the current generation. But this chip has got 8 cores in it, so that if you put 2 of these in a server, then you'll end up with 16 cores. Each core is very capable of running 2 threads. So in essence, you've got 32 processes that you can run on a single blade.
Did you ever think you would see that?
Well, the situation with chips these days are that it's really hard to make them. This one is 22 nanometers. The circuitry inside is 22 nanometers. The Sandy Bridge was 33, I think it was, and so we made a step forward. But the width of the circuitry is the width of the wavelength of the ultraviolet light that they use in their lithography process, which means that we can only make these things smaller and smaller as long as we don't run out of wavelength in the ultraviolet spectrum. And we're really close to the upper end of it right now. And then as soon as you go a little bit further, it turns into X-rays, and X-rays will just go through it. They won't etch it. So that's the challenge now. And that's why we're seeing Intel putting more cores on the chips, because it's getting harder and harder and harder to make the circuitry smaller. So we've got to adjust our programming. That's how they can keep making chips double and triple in speed. They just put more computers inside each chip. So each core is essentially a complete computer. But we love these little things. They're great.
Yeah. What do you think, just off topic for a second, of some interesting other processor technologies, including GPU, hybrid computing, heterogeneous computing?
Well, we looked at some GPUs earlier, and the problem we had there was more of a memory issue. They don't do very much memory, we're focused on this because Intel's got plans, we understand, to go down to 5 nanometers, which is about as small as you can be able to make these things. And I think their goal is to have that out in 3 or 4 years, 5 nanometers. So, yeah. We like the full power of the entire processor there.
Pretty amazing development on the hardware side.
It really is.
Analytics has evolved in part thanks to your innovations in your company and your leadership over how many years?
36.
36 years.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Goodnight, it was a pleasure to sit and talk with you. Thank you so much.
Certainly.